Super C is a poster child of how the times they are a-changin'. The original Contra on the Famicom used Konami's VRC2 mapper, and that game was popular in Japan, but it was the NES version that was a smash hit, and that had to use Nintendo's hardware. Super Contra is a game that exists for the US market. Even in Japan, the carts and boards were manufactured by Nintendo rather than Konami themselves, which made a US release easier. The art for the Famicom package is even by Konami's US artist Tom Dubois. Now technically, Super Contra was an arcade game first. There won't be many more times that we see this kind of arcade to Famicom port. The story of the game is that 5 years after the first Alien Wars, the aliens are back and you have to kill them. Yeah, this game was never going to have a big story. There's 8 stages in the game, 6 that are side-scrolling action, and 2 that are played from an overhead view. There are a lot of changes between Contra and Super Contra, some of them great, some of them not so great. One of the better improvements is how they made the bullets on the screen more visible. I never had a real difficulty with Contra, but they added some palette cycling here to help them stand out. Most of the weapons and power-ups are the same as the original Contra, with one major exception. The completely terrible fireball weapon from the original Contra is now a not as terrible, but still not really great fireball. The other weapons are the machine gun, the laser, which got a graphical overhaul and resets its shot when you hit the fire button a second time, and everyone's favorite spread gun. The B for barrier, which makes you invulnerable for a few seconds, and the R for rapid fire, which increases the speed that your shots move, are also back. A new addition is just this flashing dot, which destroys all enemies on the screen when you collect it. A big addition are slopes on a lot of stages, though I found aiming your gun while on these slopes to be a little bit annoying. You'll fire ahead if you don't angle it, which means you'll shoot into the ground, and if you do angle your shot, it follows the slope, so if you want to hit somebody who's above you, then you have to jump up and shoot. The level designs are more complicated as well. There's stages where the direction of the scrolling changes, and on one stage you're descending rather than going up. I also found Super Contra to be much harder than the original. Now some of that is going to be familiarity, but there were other things that were just off. Like on the climbing stage, if you've just been walking up this slope, when you jump over this hole a boulder will drop on you. You couldn't see that until the screen scrolled up. Or here in this earthquake region, if you jump over the portion that's going down, you land on a part that will fall into a pit. And you can't jump off of platforms that are moving down. It felt like there were a lot of areas where you had to know the stage in order to not die. At least you still have that astounding air control so that you can dodge around bullets by jumping. Though that doesn't help you with things like this boss that shoots a stream of lasers down. If you shoot out the edges, then it just goes all the way over and you'll get killed. The real trick is to shoot out the middle first. But then I also found the other bosses in the game to be trivial. They tend to have simple patterns that once you understand them, make them very easy to deal with. The real challenge in the game comes from the sheer flood of enemies that it throws at you. It feels like Super Contra's a lot more aggressive with them, and in particular the red enemies that shoot at you. The screen will fill up with things that are hard to dodge. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of variety in the enemy attacks for a long time. You'll be shooting the same drones for about the first 6 stages. I felt that the top-down stages worked pretty well in this one. Definitely better than the corridor stages in the original Contra. For 2 stages, you're playing a pretty good top-down shooter instead of a pretty good side-scrolling run-and-gun. One of the big disappointments in Super Contra is that this is actually a graphical downgrade. The VRC2 chip that Konami used in the original Famicom game allowed for a lot more animation. You can really feel it on the jungle stage where everything is perfectly still. You only have 3 continues with which to beat the entire game, but you can use this cheat code to select what level you're going to start with, and this cheat code gives you 30 lives in the Famicom version. While the NES Super C had a follow-up, this is the end of Contra on the Famicom. About 2 years after this, Konami will release Contra Spirits on the Super Famicom, and there will be a few Game Boy games as well, but Contra Force never makes it back to Japan. I feel like I'm being a bit short here, but there really isn't much to Super Contra. You run to the right, you shoot a bunch of guys, and sometimes you pick up a better weapon. That's Super Contra in a nutshell. Just like the original Contra, it's difficult, but a lot of the difficulty is mitigated by taking it slow. As it stands, Super Contra is good, but I like the original Contra better. I feel like even though it's improved in some ways, a lot of the additions wind up muddying things, and I also felt that the level design isn't as great. But that's like saying Beethoven's 5th Symphony is better than his 6th. Even if it is, the 6th is still Beethoven.